Right, let me start with something that's going to make a few of the Charlotte faithfuls spit their sweet tea. Everyone tells you the Roval is NASCAR's ultimate test of a road racer. 17 turns, Cup Series legends spinning in the infield, chaos in the final chicane, and yeah, it's tricky, but hey, here's the uncomfortable truth, mate. Put the Charlotte Roval next to Mount Panorama, and the Roval starts to look like the Woolies car park on a Sunday Arvo, because the Roval changes elevation by about 35 feet. 35. Bathurst, try 571 feet of vertical, drop 174 meters between the pit straight and the top of the mountain. That's not a racetrack. That's a cliff face with a racing line painted on it. And there's one corner up there, they call it Skyline, where the world's best NASCAR drivers, blokes who've won everything, arrive, and their brain just refuses. Why? Hold that thought, because the answer isn't about talent. It's about something far more terrifying, and we'll get to it. First, let's give the Roval its due. I'm not here to bin it entirely. Charlotte built something genuinely clever in 2018, and they took a super speedway, jammed a twisting infield section through the middle, and created this Frankenstein circuit. 2.28 miles, 17 turns where you're flat out banging into the banking 1 second and hard on the anchors into a hairpin the next. Setup is a nightmare. Your car's a compromise everywhere. Get it wrong and you're in the tire barriers before you can say playoff elimination. It's a driver's puzzle, fair enough. But here's where it all falls apart the moment you fly it 15,000 kilometers south to New South Wales. The Roval is a flat problem, a two-dimensional chess match. Bathurst is a three-dimensional survival exercise. On the Roval, if you overcook a corner, you spin harmlessly across a runoff area the size of a footy oval. At Bathurst, there is no runoff. There's a concrete wall, sometimes centimeters from your door, and the track is barely wider than a suburban street when you're screaming across the top. So the real question isn't whether NASCAR's best are quick. They obviously are. The question is what happens to a driver when the margin for error drops to zero and the ground itself starts falling away beneath the car, because that's when the mountain starts playing tricks on the engine. And that part genuinely does my head in. All right, let's get our hands dirty. Here's the bit the highlight reels never tell you. Because Bathurst climbs so high, so fast, the air at the top of Mount Panorama is genuinely thinner than at the bottom. And an engine, any engine, is basically an air pump. Less oxygen means less power. This isn't paddock folklore either. This year's supercars ran an actual engine parity study specifically about altitude, because teams were arguing that the Ford Mustangs were losing power up top compared to the Camaros. Brody Kostecki lit the whole paddock on fire at the 2025 Bathurst 1000, saying the situation was going to be a problem. Drivers arguing over horsepower, they lose to thin air. That's how brutal this mountain is. It literally chokes the motor. Now imagine bringing a NASCAR next-gen car into that, a 3,200-pound beast built for banked ovals, and asking it to breathe on the roof of a mountain it's never seen. But here's the crazy part. The engine's only half the battle. Let's talk shifting, because this is where the two worlds truly split. The NASCAR next-gen car runs a 5-speed X-Track sequential gearbox. Bang, bang, bang. Pull the lever, up you go, no clutch dance required once you're rolling. Modern, efficient, idiot-proof almost. And to be fair, Gen 3 supercars run a sequential too. Now they ditched the old H pattern in 2023. But here's the thing about Bathurst that no gearbox saves you from: the commitment. Coming down through the S's into the dipper, the track drops away so violently that the car goes light, the nose pitches, the rear unloads, and you're trail braking into a blind downhill left-hander with a wall waiting at the exit. You can have the fanciest sequential box in the world, that it won't shift for you when your stomach's in your throat and you literally cannot see the apex because the road has vanished over a crest. That's the sensory experience nobody's ready for. On an oval, you feel G-force sideways. At Bathurst, you feel it vertically. Your body gets thrown up, down, compressed through the dipper. like a roller coaster with no safety bar. It's disorienting, it's exhausting, and it does something to the human brain that no simulator has ever fully replicated. Which brings us to the real reason the world's best still can't crack it. And it's not mechanical at all. Here's the puzzle that keeps me up at night as a motorsport nerd. Shane Van Gisbergen, SVG, is right now arguably the greatest road racer NASCAR has ever imported. The man has racked up 7 Cup Series wins, swept weekends at Sonoma, dominated Watkins Glen, 9 road course wins across the NASCAR ladder. He turns American road courses into his personal playground. Brody Kostecki went the other way and was immediately rapid stateside too. So why do these two, Kiwi and Aussie, absolutely school the Americans on road courses while so many NASCAR stars go to Bathurst and just can't find that last half second? One word: fear, not cowardice. I mean respect that borders on terror. SVG grew up on that mountain. He's driven Skyline 10,000 times in his head. He knows that when the wall is 30 centimeters from his mirror at 280 kilometers an hour, he can lean on it. NASCAR drivers who've spent their whole lives on ovals with safer barriers and generous runoff, their survival instinct screams at them to lift. And at Bathurst, lifting is losing. There's a saying up there: the mountain punishes hesitation more than mistakes. A committed mistake you might survive, a moment of doubt at the wrong crest. That's where the concrete finds you. This is the invisible gap. It's not horsepower, it's not the diff, it's the thousands of hours of learned trust that let a local chuck it into Forrest's elbow flat while a visitor is white-knuckling the wheel. And speaking of the diff, did you clock the mechanical detail I slipped in earlier about the drivetrain? Because if you did, you're exactly the type of person this channel was built for. Quick one, and then we get to the good stuff. If you already knew about the spool versus diff debate, how a locked drivetrain behaves completely differently through a slow hairpin than a limited slip setup does over the top of the mountain, before I even mentioned it, mate, you're the 1% we're building this community for. Drop the word Skyline in the comments so I know who the real ones are. There's 1,000 channels for that. This is for the people who lie awake wondering why a car loses grip over a crest, why thin air steals horsepower, why one driver commits and another lifts. If that's you, the technical why behind the racing, then hit subscribe. Not as a favor to me, as an upgrade to how you watch every single race from here on out. You'll never watch Bathurst the same way again. Promise. Now, let me leave you with a scenario that's got the entire motorsport world quietly buzzing. Kyle Larson, the most naturally gifted racer in America, a bloke who wins on dirt, on asphalt, on anything with 4 wheels. He's admitted on record that Bathurst is on his radar. He's been in the exploratory phase. A supercar's start has been dangled more than once. Now picture it, 2026 or the year after, Larson versus Van Gisbergen. On the mountain, the American prodigy who can drive anything against the local king who owns that concrete like it's his backyard. Larson has the raw talent to win anywhere, but talent isn't the currency at Bathurst. Trust is, and you don't build 174 meters of vertical trust in one weekend. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want your answer below. Can the best pure talent on earth beat a man who was forged on the mountain, on the one track where hesitation kills you? Or is Mount Panorama the one thing money and talent still can't buy their way past? Tell me, Skyline, in the comments, and I'll see you at the top.